Most of the words in the English language starting with the prefix dis generally imply the bad, abnormal or imperfect side of things. Dysentery means bad bowels, dyslexia means difficulty in reading, and dystrophy means bad nourishment. The reason being that the prefix dis, which is of Greek origin, means bad, poor or difficult. Another prefix of similar nature, which is of Latin origin and which implies the bad or wrong side of things, is mal. Malicious, malpractice and malnutrition are all words with negative meanings. One word of this family is malaria. Malaria is a disease which has its history linked with that of humankind. References to the painful fevers of malaria are found throughout history. Mentions about malaria or diseases similar to malaria have been found in ancient Chinese texts, clay tablets of Mesopotamia, and even Vedic texts of ancient India. The ancient Romans associated the disease with swamps. Malaria was so common in Rome that it came to be known as the Roman fever, and it is said that malaria may have contributed to the decline of the Roman Empire. The cause of malaria was not correctly known to the people of ancient times, and thus different people had different theories about the cause behind malaria. The Romans had an interesting theory. Several regions in ancient Rome were covered with stagnant waters of marshes and swamps where the odor was really bad. One idea prevalent among the Romans was that the disease was caused due to the inhalation of this stinking air rising from marshes and swamps. It was only centuries later that it was discovered that these swamps were actually breeding grounds for the malaria vector. Such was the belief in the stinking air theory that it led to the origin of the term malaria itself. The term malaria originates from the medieval Latin malaria, meaning bad air. Along with the misplaced theory of origins, there were several misplaced notions about the treatment of malaria. Treatments such as bloodletting, amputation, and even skull operations were tried as a way of treating malaria. But there were some remarkably effective treatments as well. For instance, in the 2nd century BC, Chinese physicians identified that extracts from a plant named wormwood, which is now scientifically known to us as Artemisia annua, was an effective treatment against malaria. The anti-malarial application of the wormwood tree was first described in a book named the Handbook of Prescriptions for Emergencies, edited in around 400 AD by a Chinese physician, Gi Hong. The book mentioned about 43 methods for treating malaria. Another place where an effective treatment against malaria existed was on the western coasts of South America, from Venezuela to Bolivia, where natives were using the extracts from the bark of a tree named Cinchona as a remedy for malarial fevers. By the early 17th century, European missionaries who were already spreading Christianity in South America came to know about Cinchona and its anti-malarial properties. These missionaries were later responsible for introducing Cinchona to Europe. By the end of the century, entire Europe was aware of Cinchona and its demand was therefore increasing exponentially. As European colonies expanded in the 19th century in Africa and Asia, control of tropical diseases such as malaria was seen as crucial. Consequently, Cinchona became a pivotal tool of British, French, German and Dutch empire builders. Studies into Cinchona was the focus area for the scientists over the next century. In 1822, French researchers isolated the compound which was responsible for the anti-malarial action from the extract of the Cinchona, and they named the compound quinine. Quinine thereafter became the basis for many anti-malarial drugs, but the production of quinine solely depended on the availability of the Cinchona tree. Although there was progress in the field of treatment of malaria, the means by which malaria was transmitted was still unclear. A significant advance in this regard was made in 1880 when Charles Louis Alphonse Lavrin, a French army doctor working in Algeria, observed parasites inside the red blood cells of infected people for the first time. He therefore proposed that malaria is caused by this particular parasite. A year later, Carlos Finlay, a Cuban doctor treating people with yellow fever, a similar disease, in Havana, provided strong evidence that mosquitoes were transmitting disease to and from humans. Meanwhile, in 1897, in British India, British bacteriologist Ronald Ross discovered parasites of malaria of birds in the stomach of a mosquito. And in 1898, in Rome, Giovanni Grassi and his colleagues discovered a parasite of human malaria in another species of mosquito. By the dawn of the 20th century, it was firmly established that mosquitoes were transmitting malaria to and from humans. The realization that mosquitoes were transmitting malaria was to have an immediate impact on the entire world. Most famous incident is that of the construction of the Panama Canal. William C. Gorges, an American army surgeon, initiated campaigns of mosquito reduction using sanitary measures such as effective drainage and killing of mosquito larvae in Panama. Gorges' campaign made the construction of the Panama Canal possible, which was until then severely impacted by the death of workers due to malaria and yellow fever. It also made the killing of mosquito larvae by spreading oil on their breeding sites another widely accepted means of controlling the disease. Meanwhile, demand for quinine was soaring. Scientists throughout the world set out on finding synthetic alternatives to quinine. One result of such efforts was chloroquine, which was discovered in 1934. For the next several years, chloroquine was the dominant anti-malarial drug used extensively throughout the world. But there was a downside to the extensive use of chloroquine. By the end of the 1960s, chloroquine had been used to such extreme levels that the malaria-causing parasite had started developing resistance to it. There was a need for a new anti-malarial drug. The seeds for the new anti-malarial drug were sown in a highly unexpected place, in the battlefields of Vietnam. Since 1955, North Vietnam and South Vietnam were engaged in a brutal war. At the heart of the conflict was the desire of North Vietnam, which had defeated the French colonial administration of Vietnam in 1954, to unify the entire country under a single communist regime modeled after those of the Soviet Union and China. North Vietnam had communist countries such as the USSR and China as its allies, whereas South Vietnam had the United States of America as its principal ally. As fighting escalated between American and Vietnamese forces throughout the 1960s, malaria became the major problem affecting North Vietnamese soldiers. The tropical jungles of Vietnam were breeding grounds for malaria and other diseases. The increasing number of chloroquine-resistant malaria cases in the civilian population also further heightened North Vietnamese concerns. In 1964, the North Vietnamese government approached Chinese leader Mao Zedong and asked for Chinese assistance in combating malaria. In response to North Vietnam's plea for help, Mao Zedong launched Project 523, named after the day it was launched, that is 23rd May 1967, to find a cure for chloroquine-resistant malaria. Tu Youyou, a pharmacologist, was appointed head of Project 523. She, along with a team of scientists and chemists, started their research into developing an alternative to chloroquine. And for this, they turned to ancient Chinese traditional medicine, primarily the same book we had talked about earlier, the Handbook of Prescriptions for Emergencies by Gi Hong. The team found a reference to wormwood, which had been used earlier to treat symptoms of malaria. In 1971, Tu's team isolated one active compound in wormwood that seemed to battle malaria-causing parasites. Tu and her colleagues tested the substance on themselves before testing them on 21 other patients. All of them recovered. The following year, Tu's team distilled the compound's active ingredient, which was named Artemisinin, perhaps a blend of artemisia and quinine. Artemisinin-based therapies were found to be the most effective drugs for treatment of malaria. It was also reported to clear malaria parasites from the patient's bodies faster than any other drugs. Artemisinin-based combination therapies are now standard treatment worldwide for malaria caused due to multiple mosquito species. It is interesting as to how conflicts, which are most often destructive, can lead to something creative. The research into malaria has led the advancement of science and technology in a way that perhaps has very few parallels. Alphonse Lavren, Ronald Ross, Tu Youyou, and several others have been awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their contributions into understanding and developing methods for combating malaria. In times to come, there will definitely be a need for new drugs and medicines. Let us hope that we collaborate rather than plot against each other.